Welcome back, 7:42. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is editor of Spiked, Tom Slater, and writer Candice Holdsworth. Very good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
And Tom, should we start with The Observer? The front page, Keir Starmer telling the party we can't spend our way back to power.
Yes, so another quite uninspiring intervention, I think it's fair to say, from Keir Starmer. It's really part of his kind of steady-as-she-goes strategy. So recently we've seen Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, announce that she's basically going to stick within, broadly speaking, kind of Jeremy Hunt's spending plans, because, of course, everything's going great at the moment. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we've also got Starmer here telling, particularly the left of his party, very explicitly in this particular intervention, that the economic situation is such that we can't get too ahead of ourselves. Now, of course, we are in quite difficult economic circumstances, there's no doubt about that. But I think this can't help but feed that sense that people within the Labour Party, as well as outside of it, have, that there's no real vision here. It's all just kind of talk about administering harsh medicine.
This is what I don't understand, because when we were in times of austerity, in 2010 onwards, it was the Labour Party saying we need to spend our way out of austerity rather than cut. And now they're saying we're in effect in a sort of austerity time, and now they're saying, oh no, we can't spend. I
mean, I think he's just trying to...
Just sort of what the Labour Party stands for.
Well, that's the key question. I mean, even where Keir Starmer is concerned, anything... He's now in a situation where he's been U-turning on policies that have already been announced. And the thing is, it adds to that image of the electorate of what do you actually stand for. If we're going to have an actual kind of economic argument, that should involve positions sincerely held being put as firmly to the public as possible. And yet it feels like we're back into that situation that we were at in, certainly for most of the 2000s, 1990s, where it felt like the main parties were just dancing on a head of a pin. I really don't think that's good for democratic debate. I really don't think that's good for coming up with any genuinely radical or different solutions to the situation that we find ourselves in. It does feel like both parties are committed to just trundling on and hoping that things get better. And whilst, given the fact that the Tory party is completely imploded, Keir Starmer does feel like he can walk it to victory at the next election. I don't think it leaves our politics in a particularly good position when you just have a situation where we're back to parties just offering kind of competing flavours of blancmange. I think it makes people switch off from politics, really.
Yeah.
And it does feel like we're getting back into that stage.
I know, it's like this is what he's saying now. What will he say next? I mean, he's backtracked on some pretty major things. I mean, they got rid of that flagship Green New Deal policy.
Yeah.
And apparently it was reported that he said, I hate tree huggers.
Yeah.
Which was like, what? Like, no, that's not what we associate with you at all. Why are you saying things like that? He's creating such a confusing image for himself. And I just wonder if he knows that actually if he just stuck by what he believed in, people would have more respect for him than constantly flip-flopping like this. Who is he appealing to? And no one trusts what he says now.
I don't think he does believe in anything, though. And I don't mean that just as a kind of catty comment. I mean, he came into politics quite late. He did as a kind of young person have a history in sort of more far-left politics, but, that's not unusual for people of a certain age, going through university and so on. But given the fact that he won the leadership saying, I'm basically going to be Jeremy Corbyn, but who can do his tie up straight and sing the national anthem, through to junking all of those policies, to having this flirtation with green politics, saying we're going to be investing 28 billion a year and then backing down. I don't think he stands for anything other than trying to win power, and that's only going to, help you for so long. As I say, if it wasn't for what a terrible state the Tory party in, I think people would be wondering what the hell's going on with the Labour Party. But, you can't argue with double-digit poll leads.
No.
Yeah. Although, apparently on the doorstep, they have heard people say, we're not happy with the way the Conservatives are at the moment, but we're not sure about Keir Starmer. So the Conservative MPs were feeling really down. But since they've been campaigning, they're actually feeling a bit more hopeful. But they've still got to offer something. They've still got to have a proper alternative.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Let's have a look at the Daily Star Sunday, should we? MI6, we think of Bond and all these exciting stories. They want a computer nerd.
Yes, yes. Well, this is in the Star. They're saying that they're looking for someone to combat these new AI threats. So they're looking for someone whose specialism is in computer science, artificial intelligence, and it conflicts with the image we have of James Bond as being this sort of romantic figure. But to me, it wasn't that surprising because a few people I know actually did end up going into MI6 and MI5.
Really?
Did physics and mathematics. They like those sorts of people because so much of what we do now is big data analysis and having to just look at lots of different information sources and sort through them. So I think they've been doing this for quite a while now. It's not new.
No, but it's quite nice. The rise of the geeks, eh, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
See, I like a bit of that.
Inheriting the earth and all that stuff. But we hear constantly that so much of their work nowadays is all just to do with cyber attacks and with things kind of, you know, behind a computer. So it does show you how these different threats are evolving.
Yeah.
Yes.
To the benefit of the nerds.
Yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't
Good.
it? Tom, let's have a look at the Times, shall we? About ticket offices shutting down, and therefore so does human interaction.
Yeah, so it's a kind of right around of... Obviously, we've been talking over the course of the past week of these 1,000 ticket offices closing, some even in some of the big central London hubs just closing completely for good, concerns about the impact of that. But this story is kind of putting it in the context of how across society now, whether it's kind of self-checkouts at supermarkets or the fact that when you try and contact your energy supplier, you're more likely to... Your first stage is some sort of AI chatbot before you actually fight to talk to a human being. Even, I saw pointed out the other day, the number of call centres which used to exist have been replaced by those kind of slightly creepy robotic sentence formation robots which will try and address you. And just how, first of all, as we all know, this is a real problem for people who are elderly, disabled, people who even a kind of self-checkout is actually a pretty big obstacle to going about your business rather than any of these other new things. But also just how those kind of moments of human interaction have been kind of got rid of for technologies which aren't as good as a human anyway. It'd be one thing if they were so... Yeah. I always think about that when you go to the supermarket, those self-checkouts. You still have to have that person there who has to, like, make up for the fact that this machine is basically not actually works that well to help you navigate it and so on.
I just wonder if this is... I mean, in terms of... You get more human interaction on the self-checkouts.
I know.
Because you have to go, oh, it's not gone through. So you get, rather than... If you go to the tills, all you get is... Do you need a bag?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is
That's
it.
true.
Have you got a nectar card?
Yeah. It's a bonding experience, isn't it? The
So you go to the self-checkout
I
for
do.
chat.
Do you?
Yeah.
You literally, you get more, you see more of the people. And the minute you want to buy, even if you want to buy an alcohol-free beer, you've still got to get it age-approved.
Really?
Yeah. It's great.
That is crackers.
Never mind
As
buying
you
a
would
can of
say.
Red Bull, but the alarm bells go off. And whoop, whoop, whoop.
So you also can't buy teaspoons, do you know that, without being age verified?
What is that? Well, they're
Counts
just
as a weapon.
classified as the same thing as knives or whatever.
Yeah.
There you go.
Can't buy teaspoons because it was a very hot day. I was trying to buy Ben & Jerry's and a packet of teaspoons. Can't do it without your ID. There you go, learnt something today.
What has the world come to?
What is the world coming to, Tom Slater?
The trouble is, I always say that if it's alcohol or anything, and they just go, I say, well, you could have asked if I was over 18.
Yeah, it's a
or
huge
whatever.
compliment.
And they all look at, oh,
Yeah.
yes, some old bloke with that joke again. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, I quite like being ID'd, to be fair.
It's great.
Candice, should we look at Barbie in the Times?
Yeah, so this is an interesting opinion piece in the Times. It's Hadley Freeman, the writer, and she's talking about the new Barbie film. And I've been surprised, actually, at the reaction that the film's had. A lot of people have been quite divided about it and have said it brings up feminist issues about body image and is this something trivial and superficial. But I honestly didn't think that the film would be that because it's directed by Greta Gerwig, who is such a substantial film director. I mean, she did Little Women, which is one of my favourite films.
Me too.
So I know it's probably going to be a really interesting, quirky take on Barbie. And I just wonder, though, if they've maybe marketed it in a more mainstream way because they want to bring in audiences, so people aren't quite getting that this could be a really interesting, really good film.
Yeah, I've heard it's Barbie but immersed in the real world.
Yes.
It's going to be like a dark Barbie.
Yes.
Adult Barbie.
There we go.
Adult
Would you watch it,
Barbie.
Tom?
No, I'm keen. I'm curious as to how it's going to turn out.
yeah.
For the reason that you say, because of the fact that she has this kind of almost more artistic cinema kind of pedigree, and yet she's been given this big mainstream toy adaptation. I'm quite interested to see what it will pan out as.
Yeah.
It's intriguing. It's just all the PR around it has made it very fascinating. Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Tom. Gendered pronouns. So the Arts Council is going to stop using he, she. No, I'm sympathetic to some of this, right? And I know a lot of our viewers and listeners aren't. I think we need to be a little bit more tolerant. But no wonder people get rubbed up the wrong way when this sort of thing happens.
I think so, because also it feels at best like a colossal waste of time. I refuse to believe that any trans person has been knocking at the door of the Arts Council Wales and saying, please, could you remove those he, she pronouns from your documentation? It's something that they're doing to placate the offence of someone who probably doesn't even exist. And it's that sort of thing where you think this is a complete waste of time. It's also in many cases, I'm sure, because they want to just replace he and she with they and them in all circumstances. That's going to create some very strange ungrammatical sentences. It's not something that you can easily, straightforwardly do. And as I say...
and actually, I don't know that you should blame trans people in the sense that if, you know, a trans woman wants to be called she,
well, this is
and
the
a
point.
trans man wants to be called he. There's a very small number of people in the middle who say I'm gender neutral.
I'm plural and all that. Yeah, it's a very small amount of people. And as you say, going back to, I was just saying in the beginning, I refuse to believe this is at the behest of anyone, really. These are these organisations which are convinced that they have to engage in this kind of thing. They feel like it's virtue signalling. They feel like it's going to make them look dead progressive and so on. And I think it just alienates a lot of people who think, why are you doing things like this, especially when, you know, all kinds of public institutions are hardly in rude health at the moment. So to be engaging in this kind of thing, as you say, it just rubs people up the wrong way, even if it feels relatively trivial in the grand scheme of things.
I agree. I think, you know, for a lot of trans people, they're just going about their lives quietly, and most people that they know personally will use the pronouns that they prefer, because it's actually, you know, you probably feel quite rude calling someone he if they didn't want to be called he. I think a lot of this is activism, and I think it's the activism which polarises people, because it's very black and white, and it doesn't operate in those nuances and just those spaces of human decency and kindness that most of us are in. It's very political, it's very black and white.
Yeah, it's a bit odd.
Yeah.
We'll leave the last one because we haven't got time to do it justice. You can bring it back in the next hour if you are. But Candice, Tom, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Talking about what you can do on a Sunday, because if you want to mow the lawn in 6.5 minutes, is it too early at 8 o'clock in the morning? Natasha says, does anyone know what time I can hoover on a weekday? I'm asking as my neighbour has made a formal complaint to my housing association for hoovering at 8:30 a.m. on a weekday.
Interesting.
He said that. I wouldn't have thought on a week. He said, I would find it a little bit irritating if I was your neighbour, but I wouldn't complain about it.
No, I wouldn't complain about it. Isn't the rule for, like, building work and stuff 8 a.m.
I don't,
on a
something
weekday?
like that.
I believe it's something like that.
But then again,
housework would be in the same category.
To not have a go, Natasha, I find the sound of a vacuum cleaner immensely irritating. And that's because my mother did it.
All the
every
time.
day. Oh, just whip round with a hoover. It's just lift up your feet. When you're a kid and you're watching the telly, it's lift up your feet and all that sort of thing. It used to drive me crackers.
It's haunted you, hasn't it?
It has haunted me ever since.
Well, do stick with us. This is Breakfast on GB News.